I didn't defend my husband when my friends made false DV allegations against him. This might be a long post. I am at a loss on what I should do. I met my husband when I was 20 at a gym. I was trying to lose some weight. He eventually noticed that I was sticking to my New Year's resolution. 2 months later we were dating. I learned that he was from Indiana and he had been stationed in Texas for just over 2 years at that point. Eventually he met my family and my parents instantly liked him. My 2 younger sisters took a bit longer to woo over, but my older brother and him clashed over sports and loved to trash talk each other. So all in all my family loved him. He was incredibly patient and kept me motivated not only at the gym but in school as well. He had to work late on his birthday 9 p.m. So I took him out to Buffalo Wild Wings for his birthday and we had a great time. I had also set up a surprise birthday party for him the next day, his actual birthday. Nothing extravagant, but his 2 roommates, the lady I thought he was dating and another coworker of theirs, were immediately on board and had told him they were going on a couple's trip for the weekend. My family wanted to come to be there for the surprise and cake before heading home, and a handful of other friends. Everything was in place and the plan was that I would hide behind the door and jump on his back and cover his eyes, then the lights would come on and everyone would yell. Looking back, that was such a dumb idea, but it sounded funny at the time. I heard his truck pull into the drive and everyone hid. It was almost pitch black in the house. He opens the door and shuts it and takes a few steps and I jump on his back. Everything happened so fast. I was immediately flipped over and slammed into the ground as the lights came on. I felt a sharp, intense pain in my shoulder and my ears were ringing. He was horrified at what happened and my brother and dad started yelling at him. He was trying to help and my mother and his roommates had to get between him and my father and brother. He just kept apologizing to me. So we spent his birthday in the ER. I had a separated shoulder and broken collarbone. I was initially furious at him for doing that and didn't want him around me. So he sat in the waiting room. By then my brother and father had calmed down and realized it for what it was. What was he supposed to think walking into his house believing it to be empty and get jumped on from behind? Eventually I agreed to let him come back and he immediately started to cry and telling me how sorry he was and that he would never ever do that to me again. I want to make this clear to everyone reading this. This was in no way his fault. It was a natural reaction and I wish I had never jumped on his back. He struggled more than I did to put this behind us, but I kept up with my schoolwork and we continued to grow close over the next year. I would listen to him vent about work and he would do the same for me and my schoolwork. We went on weekend trips, sometimes just us and sometimes with friends. Sorry, I'm trying to keep this short, but I have so many happy memories that I want to share, but I'll get to the reason why I'm posting this. Eventually he asked me to marry him and it was a no-brainer. He was and still is the love of my life and the only man for me. We got married in a small ceremony with family and a few friends. When his second enlistment ended, we decided that the opportunity for him as a civilian air traffic controller was too good to pass up. It was hard for him to say goodbye to the Air Force, but he wanted us to finally settle down. We had a move between our wedding and when he finally left the service. By then I was working and we had a very large amount saved up. As he waited to find out where the FAA wanted him to go, we stayed with my brother and his wife back in my hometown. Eventually he got the email and to our surprise he would be working fairly close to where we already were. He knew how much I had missed my hometown, so we decided to buy a house and he would commute almost an hour and a half each way. It is a huge sacrifice on his part. 2020 happened and I lost my job, but my husband made more than enough to cover my lost wages. We weren't getting any younger and decided to start a family. It took a bit, but eventually I got pregnant and we have a wonderful 2-year-old son. First year was a struggle for us both as we tried to adapt to parenthood. My husband struggled more than I did, but I helped him. If you have kept up with the news, the FAA is short-staffed with not enough controllers, so my husband works mandatory overtime and usually most shifts are 10 hours legally the max, and each Wednesday he gets off work at 11 p.m. and has to be back at work by 8 a.m. That's a very short turnaround that would leave him with at the most 5 hours of sleep if he drove home. So on those nights he sleeps at a coworker's house. He has offered to make the drive, but I don't want him driving tired or working tired either. Honestly, it did suck on those nights when he wasn't home and our son just wouldn't sleep. He encouraged me to reconnect with old friends and I have, which leaves us with the reason for this post. 2 weeks ago I met up with some old girlfriends for a play date to watch our kids crawl around. Most of them were complaining about their husbands, fiancés or boyfriends not helping around the house. I do most of the housework, but my husband has always helped me when he is home. I changed the subject and asked one of my friends, I'll call Lana, how often does her daughter wake up in the middle of the night? This eventually led to me telling them that my husband stays near his work on Wednesdays and some of those nights were rough on me, especially early on. That got me a lot of sympathy and I don't know why it felt good to hear someone that wasn't family say those things. I kept my mouth shut when they said my husband should just suck it up and take care of his kid and that their husbands commute 2 hours to work each way. I wanted to say, well, your husbands have the same hours every day and aren't responsible for others' lives. Instead, I just nodded in agreement. It makes me sick that I did that. My husband woke up just as much as I did and still does when our son needs him. Last week my husband had a very rare Saturday and Sunday off. My parents offered us a child-free weekend to include Thursday and Friday and we took it. My husband was working and I met my sister-in-law that Thursday for lunch to invite them over for dinner on Friday. I tripped on the curb and had to twist to make sure my son didn't hit the cement. I banged my right knee pretty good. It's still purple but not hurting as much. We wanted to have some people over for dinner and invited my older brother/sister-in-law as well as 2 of my friends from the previous week and their husbands. Going back to getting slammed by my husband, he mentioned that he hates that story. That even if it wasn't intentional, he seriously injured me. So I stopped telling that story out of respect for him. Friday rolls around and my husband picks up everything we need to make a large pot of spaghetti and a few bottles of wine. We had been discussing trying to have another child, so I was planning on getting a bit tipsy and jumping my husband's bones after our guests left. I wore a white halter top dress that he loves. Risky to wear when eating pasta and drinking red wine, but I felt good. Our guests arrive and we all ourselves a glass of wine and making small talk. I notice Lana whispering something to her husband but ignore it, figuring maybe she liked something and was asking her husband if they could get something similar. The dinner starts and everything is going well. My husband isn't a big drinker but had went to get himself a second glass and tongs to make getting seconds easier. I was almost done with my fourth, as was my sister-in-law and Lana. My other friend, Sarah fake name, was sipping her first and their husbands were taking it slow. My brother got a call from work and stepped into a guest room to take the call. That's when my sister-in-law asks me to tell the story of how I broke my collarbone and separated my shoulder. I figured since my husband was out of the room that no harm no foul. I tell the story and I'm laughing. My sister-in-law is laughing and Sarah and her husband seem amused. Lana and her husband aren't laughing. Lana reaches across the table and grabs my hand and says, "I saw your knee and how bruised it is." My sister-in-law snorts as Lana continues. "You said he doesn't help with your son and now he has you believing that what he did to your shoulder was some kind of accident." Husband walks in and asks what we are talking about and Lana tells him that she knows that he is abusing me. That he doesn't help with our son, that he obviously shoved me down and bruised my knee. That I should have left him when he broke my shoulder. My husband immediately looks at me and asks, "What the hell did you tell her?" That's when Lana's husband speaks up and tells my husband to lower his voice because he won't tolerate verbal abuse and that if you lay a finger on her, I will beat your ass. I'm too shocked to speak and stick up for my husband. My husband didn't take kindly to that and told them to get the fuck out our house. Brother hears the confrontation as Lana and Sarah's husband stand between my husband and I. My husband tells them again. "Don't make me repeat myself. I'm not going to tolerate being called a wife beater. Get the hell out." My brother tries explaining that my husband doesn't hit me and I just turtle like a coward. My husband is trying to calm down and eventually my sister-in-law gets Sarah to drag her husband out of the house. Lana is still trying to keep her husband riled up. I remember my husband looking at me as if he was pleading with me to speak up for him, but I just sat there unable to do anything. I don't know why. I've never been in a situation like this before. Lana and her husband start telling me I need to leave with them so my husband doesn't hurt me. My husband flips his shit at that and my brother-in-law had to almost tackle him. "Tell them the truth. B, don't walk out that door." My husband's voice was surprisingly calm. I followed them out of the door. I was almost in the car with them with my sister-in-law who seemed to sober up by then pulled me back and my brother forced Lana and her husband to finally leave. I get back inside and just started crying. I look at my husband and the love in his eyes were gone. He looked like a stranger to me. I tried to hug him and he pulled away and said he needed some space. I remember telling him that perhaps he could stay with my brother. I was insulted in our home. You stood by and let your friends lie and you didn't say a word. You walked out the door to follow them. You chose them over me. If anyone needs to leave, it's you. I'm not saying you have to leave, but I'm not leaving our house tonight. I need some time and space to think about how to move forward. My brother agreed with my husband and I left with them. My brother didn't say a word as we rode to his house. I couldn't stop crying and wondering why I let them insult my husband and our marriage like that. When we got home, my brother went off on me, asking me the same questions I had asked myself. That my husband never did the things my friends accused him how. I didn't sleep that nights. Every call and text went unanswered. I told my parents what happened. They reacted in a calmer manner but aren't happy with me right now. My family is supportive but firmly on my husband's side and honestly I don't blame them. I have no excuse for not defending him and trying to de-escalate the situation. My husband wants space and I'm trying to give him that, but I miss being near him. He has stopped by every day to see our son, but he has been avoiding talking to me. I got a call from him today saying that he is deeply hurt and feels betrayed. That he isn't sure if he can trust me again. He still loves me, but he needs to sort out things on his end, but he was considering separation. I told Lana and Sarah to fuck off and never contact me again. I'm so hurt and angry. Very angry at myself. I want my husband back, but I'm not sure if that's possible. I need some advice. Please. I want things to be back to normal. I want it picked up and slung over his shoulder as he grabs my butt. I want him to kiss my stretch marks and tell me that he loves even more for them. What do I do?